Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Silent Punt Podcast. I'm your host, Henny. Joining us this week is our special guest co-host, Lindsey Smith. I met Lindsey on Substack. She's got a hilarious Substack called Not Normal. I love the name, and it makes me laugh every time I read it. She's also a professor at the University of North Carolina. So she has dumbed herself down to join us in this nonsense this week. So, Lindsey, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be part of this podcast.
Yeah, tell us a couple things about yourself.
Yeah, so I joined Substack, I think, back in January after lurking for a while. And my goal was because I spent a lot of time writing science articles for my job, and I also am a teacher. I really just wanted an outlet to have fun. I love writing humor. I think of it as kind of an intellectual puzzle to try to come up with jokes that are kind of smart and incisive, but also often really silly. And then was really delighted to find this Substack community where people are super kind, like genuinely very supportive of each other, and also just really funny. I mean, I think for me, that's the best part is going on, like hopping into Substack and then just having a break from daily life and just laughing with nice, smart people.
Yeah, and not doing it watching 10-second reels of people getting hit in the balls with, a ball or something. That you're
Yeah,
actually
totally. Well, I think
exercising your mind a little.
no, that I think that's part of it. It's like you don't feel gross after being on Substack the way you do
Right.
after spending time on pretty
Right.
much any other social media platform, TikTok, Twitter, what have you. You can easily get sucked into those things, but after I do Substack, it's like, oh, these are real people. This is really nice. I often learn something. No, it's just been really great.
And what's your day job?
So my day job is primarily as a research scientist. So I run big studies on kind of the causes of diet-related diseases like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and then I also work on designing and evaluating policy to prevent those things. So thinking about things like how do we get healthier school foods? How do we deal with the fact that we have confusing food labels? Like what is a seed oil? What is food dye? What should or should we not be doing about those things? Those are all the kinds of problems that I grapple with in my job. And then part of my job is teaching undergraduates and graduate students about food and nutrition.
I think we might have just found our topic for our second podcast in the future because I'm very interested in a lot of that stuff. We've hit on some of that stuff in the past. I'm always interested with professors from really large institutions. What if you had to divide your job 70-30, 50-50, what percent is the first part and what percent is, in the classroom with the
That's such a
kids?
good question. And it's so different. So for me, when I tell people what my job is, I say I'm a professor, they're like, oh, what do you teach? But for me, I would say it's probably 80% research and maybe 20% teaching. If that might be even less. I have PhD students, and that's much more one-on-one. And then I teach these large undergraduate classes. My husband is also a professor at UNC, and his is the opposite. So he's
Hmm,
probably 80% teaching and 20% research. It kind of just depends on what field you're in
interesting. All right.
and what university you're at. At a university like UNC, that's very research focused, versus like a liberal arts college that you might have. That's going to be almost all teaching.
Yeah, that was one of our strategies when I was coaching college football at small liberal arts schools. We would be talking to kids that were debating whether to play football in college and go to a small school or to give it up and go to a large research-based institution. And that would be one of our counter arguments is you're going to know all your professors and
Mm.
you're going to have those interactions kind of like what your husband's probably doing. So,
Yeah, I think they're both great. They're just different models. Like you can
right.
create a small community in a big university, but you have to work at it. And I think if you're at a small liberal arts college, that probably is just more organic because of the size, and you'll probably interact with people multiple times, even without trying. Whereas at a UNC, you kind of have to seek that out to some degree.
Yeah, we're in the last year starting to go through some of those thought games with our daughter who's 16, junior in high school, and just where do you want to be and where are you comfortable? And because when you're comfortable and happy in an environment, you're going to be successful. So,
Yeah, and
um,
that's such a hard thing to figure out when
right.
you're in high school and you don't really know. And I went to Northwestern for undergrad, and it was really difficult for me because I was coming from a tiny town in rural Ohio, and then going to this large research university where I feel like everybody was pre-med somehow. I was also
Mm.
pre-med. It was really intense. And I actually think in retrospect, I probably would have been a lot happier at a small liberal arts college, but I just didn't even know what that was. You kind of have to have someone show you what the options are.
Yeah, that's my wife wound up at a small liberal arts college for that reason. She was from a really small town, farm town in central Illinois, and was going to go to the University of Illinois, and it was just too overwhelming for her, and found a really nice community and a perfect place for her. So, um, all right, you're going to have this week's sticker. I taught Lindsay about what a football helmet sticker is for a good thing, and she's going to give away this week's helmet sticker.
Yes. Well, I know all about the helmet stickers because I'm an Ohio State Buckeyes fan.
Oh,
And
goodness
they
gracious.
get, the stickers. Yes, I know. We can talk about that. But yeah, so this week's sticker goes to Ahmed Al Ahmed, who was the hero, really brave guy who stopped one of the shooters at Bondi Beach in Australia, with the kind of anti-Jewish shooting that happened there, I guess a week ago, a little over a week ago.
Yeah.
And just really remarkable act of bravery and also physical strength. I think, I don't know, for me, it was one of the most moving things that I have seen or read about in years to really behold how someone could put their life at risk to do this.
Yeah, there's so much that we see online now, video wise. It kind of takes something to grab our attention, and you're just used to seeing the slop, as they say, and then you see something like that, and it's like, holy cow, that's amazing. I've never
Yeah.
seen anything like that.
Yeah, and I think with those shootings, I mean, they're so deeply tragic and they make you question humanity and this amount of hatred and violence. And then to have that counteracted so strongly by, the act of this person. And then there were also other folks too who stepped in. There was a older couple, I think in their 60s, who actually died trying to stop one of the shooters.
Mhm.
And I think one other person, and their names are eluding me, but just to know that there are people who see this happening and are willing to, instead of running and hiding, actually take that step. It makes you think. To me, I thought to myself, okay, how can I make sure that I and my kids are also going to be these kinds of people if we're faced with this scenario? Is really, I think, a moment of reflection.
Yeah, I've thought about that before as a man, a husband, a dad. I would, if God forbid I ever wound up in one of those situations, I would like to think that I would respond like Ahmed did, but you never know how you're going to respond in those situations. But also, B, I think I would have a much different response if I was with my wife or my child than I would
Mhm.
be if I was by myself. Um,
That's a good point. That's a good
you're
point.
by
I think
yourself,
that- Yeah.
maybe you're more apt to think about others. You're with your family, you're going to think about your family.
Totally. I mean, I'll be honest, I think about it as a college instructor,
Yeah.
especially being in front of, 125, 150. I've had classes of 300 students before. They're all effectively strangers. And, you think about, well, how would I respond? Should I be suddenly responsible for all of these people? Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's awful that our teachers now have to, well, our teachers and our students have to think about that daily. So, on that wonderfully positive note, we're going to go to our gasser of the week. And this one's a little silly, but did you happen to see the news item about Miss Finland?
No.
So, she was the pageant person,
Yeah,
Miss
yeah.
Finland, going to the Miss Universe thing. Her name is Sarah Dizaface. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Um, but she was at a function with some ladies from Asian countries and was caught in a picture pulling her eyelids, you know, making it look like she was making fun of Asian people. Um, so Finland and Miss Finland, they basically stripped her of her Miss Finlandship over
Oh my
this
God.
incident. Um, but I'm going to give the gasser not to Finland and Miss Finland, but to our society for being overly particular about people being silly. Now, she may have done it really being trying to be racist and mean, or she might have been goofing around with people, or her excuse was I was actually just like stretching my face and they caught me mid whatever. Um,
Yeah. Which
but
I would also believe. I mean, I think the thing that don't we know by now that what you see online is not real, that images can be distorted, that you could take something like just a snapshot of something and without any context, you could make it into all sorts of things. I mean, it's possible she did that and it was with racist intent, but it's really hard to evaluate that off of the basis of a photograph, which is what it sounds like it was.
yeah,
Um,
and I'm going to use myself as an example. When I was a baby and then as a toddler, I had like a chubby face and I still have fairly thin eyes. And when I smile and then when I laugh, they get even smaller. And I was born in mid 70s at the tail end of the Vietnam War when there was a decent amount of Asian people coming over and Asian orphans being adopted by American families. And my mother was stopped several times and told how wonderful it was that she had adopted this child from Vietnam and it was me. Um, and I still have that look periodically in my face. And so we will sometimes both that side of my family and my wife and daughter kind of joke about stuff like that, where if you're not in our family, you would, if you heard it from the outside, it might come off a little strange. Um, but it's just
yeah.
all in good fun. And we're all different, right? Like I expect people to make fun of some of the different weird things that I do or how I look or my baldness or the hair in my nose or my ears, like whatever. That's who I am.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about something like that is we can't really know what actually happened there, but the kind of what strikes me is we have a lot bigger problems to worry about. We do have issues with racism, but that's not we're like if you could think about where to allocate your time and attention, it's not to
And
that. And then on top of that, it causes all this reaction, right? It's like, oh my God, cancel culture. And then we have like this anti cancel culture thing that's happening where ironically it's almost like canceling people for getting canceled. It's just like this never ending snowball effect. And it's just wild to behold because meanwhile we have legitimate, serious problems and we're all over here like nattering about Miss Finland, you know?
which is what the powers that be want us to be doing, not doing the
Absolutely.
work that you're
Yeah.
talking about at the very beginning.
It's like it's a distraction basically.
Right. Um, okay. Reminder, folks, rate, review, subscribe us. We are on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. I just got my Spotify wrapped from the podcast yesterday. I didn't even know that was a thing. And it told me, I think it was very deeply searching the algorithm for something nice it could say about this particular podcast. It said, people who watch this, watch to the end, or listen to it, I guess, on Spotify, more than 60% of other podcasts that are out there. So anybody
Oh.
that's listening typically listens to the end. So hopefully we don't screw that up this week. Um,
Well, if we do, you can blame it on me.
there we go. I'll throw you under the bus in a hot second. Stick around at the end. We got a couple of cool comments from listeners last week, but we're going to get right into it with some North Carolina chat. North Carolina this past offseason hired a new football coach, Bill Belichick. Very interesting man. He's got an interesting girlfriend as well. We might hit on that. But I think, Lindsay, you had some football players in some of your classes this past semester, and the whole landscape of what those kids have to do in school and what they don't has really changed in the last few years with NIL and the money that they're making. How have you seen that reflected in your classroom experience?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I've had football players in my class for a long time. And so I've kind of seen like these changes a little bit. I think the thing to remember before I say what I'm going to say is that I don't really put any kind of blame on the football players themselves. I know just from reading their essays and talking to them and talking to other people who support them, like their dietitians, that they are, and I'm sure you know this with the job that you had. I mean, they are working full-time jobs as athletes. I mean, they have a tremendously intense schedule. They're very good at what they do. They're under a ton of pressure. There's this national spotlight. For the players this year, I think 70 members of the team were transfer students. Uh, and then when you add the Bill Belichick to it all, there's a lot going on there. And then there's also high stakes financially because some of them, many of them are making quite a bit of money. So from the perspective of the players, like I recognize that they're under just a ton of pressure. This is like serious stuff. I think as an instructor, what I find irritating is that as we've had this increased commercialization of college athletics, particularly football and men's basketball, because those are the revenue generating sports, it really feels like we should just give up any illusion that these are really student athletes, that the student comes first and the athlete comes second. These are really professional players. They are getting paid from multiple sources. They have agents, they get money. Players are like buying their parents' houses. And so we should not necessarily be forcing them into the classroom if that's not something that they want to do or have the academic credentials to do. I don't really blame a football player for not wanting to come to my 8 a.m. nutrition class when they're making six figures playing football. They're already doing their careers. And then we're kind of shoehorning them into this outdated model, which used to work and, in my opinion, no longer does. That's not to say that I don't welcome football players into the classroom. I welcome anybody who like wants to learn and has met kind of like the prerequisites to be in that classroom. Absolutely 100% welcome and embrace them. It just strikes me over time as we've moved to this new model that there's this really big kind of divide between what the players are actually there to do and what they're kind of being made to do under this old model of student athlete.
Yeah, we've completely abandoned we're developing young men and young people and education by all the priorities that have been set, have abandoned that, but the model hasn't caught up to that. Nobody is speaking to that. And part of that for college football in particular, I know you're a college football and a college basketball fan. I think there's some good juxtaposition, whatever that word is, between the two, because college basketball is still kind of under the umbrella of the NCAA because of the NCAA basketball tournament and how it's funded. College football is and has been kind of outside of that because of the bowl system. Yeah, been doing some research for a book that I'm working on, and it's about the development of sport, in the early 1900s and why England and America started to build these things. And it really was for the development of youth. And
Yeah.
then later on in the 70s with Title IX, that started to kind of bring women into the fold as well. But I think it just speaks totally to our over monetization of everything. If things aren't making money, it doesn't matter. It's not successful. And the other part that we're really doing a disservice to these kids on is, you talked about them buying their families' houses, and I visited some places, and you go into the parking lot there at the team facility, and it's like Lamborghinis and this and that. Um, Nobody's teaching these kids about taxes. They're going to have to pay taxes on all of this money. B, 2% of you are going to ever make a dime in the NFL. So
Yeah.
whatever money you're making right now, like you have to be putting away. I worked with a guy whose uh, son was a second round draft pick in Major League Baseball, and he got a reasonable signing bonus. But he also knew he was going to have to play in the minor leagues for a bunch of years making no money. So they took that entire signing bonus and put it away, and he had to live on his minor league deal because he didn't know, am I going to be done when I'm 26, when I'm
Right.
28? Um, is there do you know of anything within the university setting, and you're not an athletic department person, but does it feel like these kids are getting any direction in that regard?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, they do get a lot of direction in other aspects. I mean, they've got heavy duty academic tutoring, heavy duty like nutrition and fitness. It would surprise me if they were totally uncounseled in this space, but I really don't know. I mean, I do agree with you though. It's just you think about a kid who's like 18 or 19 and getting this like massive paycheck. It'd be hard for anybody
Right.
to know how to do that. I have heard very much a rumor that one of the men's basketball team members actually owns several businesses in Chapel Hill. So he's taken some of that money and like become a small business owner with it,
That's
which I think
cool.
is so cool.
Yeah.
That's very impressive, but I really have no idea what kind of counseling they're getting.
Um,
I will say, like I do understand the perspective of paying them in that they're bringing in this huge amount of
right.
money for the university. They're working, I mean, the amount of time and effort that they're putting into it is like that of a job.
Full-time job.
So it makes sense to me, but it's just if you put it in as a job, if that's what it is, which it is, they're getting paid, they're professional athletes. It seems crazy to me, like with any other job, that you would then make them also get a college degree in something. Like it just, it doesn't really make any sense. So that's kind of where my struggle with it is. I'm like, we should just call it what it is, which is professional athletics that is occurring on a college campus.
Right.
And I mean, I will say, even as much as I kind of hate it, like I wrote a satirical piece that was published in McSweeney's poking fun at this idea that UNC would spend $50 million on Bill Belichick when our buildings are crumbling, we have asbestos, we have lead in the water. Like, how can this be? Like, that's wild. But I think the university sees it as we can't forego this opportunity to make money. This is a different pathway over the last year with all of the federal funding cuts. They see it increasingly as we need to diversify financially. And one of the things we produce is entertainment in the form of college athletics. We produce education and research. Those are the things that were always the kind of bread and butter, but we also have this entertainment component, and that's what's making more money. So from their perspective, I understand why they're doing it. It does feel gross as a faculty member to watch it happen. It feels really like it really kind of makes me mad that first of all I feel bad for these players. They're in my classroom and they're not qualified. They're not able to keep up. They just like I said, it's not their fault. I don't in any way blame them. It's like if you went if someone took me or you and put us in like a surgeon operating room and
All
was
right.
like, "Okay, now hang." Like, no, you're not like prepared to be there. Maybe you could be, but you're not currently. And then it's also a real shame for the other students because they're doing group work and then you've
Mm.
got one student or two students who's just really not able to contribute. And then as a faculty member, I'm spending like 80% of my time in the classroom managing just a small subset of students. And so it's just not working out. And that's not to say that there might be some players for whom it doesn't, but broad strokes, my experience has been we've really shifted to this new model and it doesn't fit anymore.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And, the root of all of it is money. And I don't have all of the answers, but I do know that the 70 something year old man that you referenced making $50 million is also dating a 24-year-old
Yeah.
cheerleader. We had some cheerleader discussions, Lindsay and I, before the podcast. What's the scuttlebutt in Chapel Hill about that situation?
Oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. I mean, I will tell you that the one silver lining is that it's led to a lot of jokes. Like
Yeah.
pretty much anywhere you go in any campus classroom, like if you might be meeting someone from a different school that you've never interacted with before, everybody can share a laugh about this because it's so absurd. It feels very kind
Absurd's
of
a
like
good word for it.
undignified. But you can only laugh, it's like so absurd, it's like tabloid fodder.
Yeah.
You open up the news and you see some kind of wild headline. It's just like, oh boy, here we go again.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've my one of my regular co-hosts, Travis, and I have had many a discussion about the old man with money that all of a sudden has a beautiful
Super young
young
girlfriend.
lady on his arm. It's there's
Right.
just there must be nobody in their lives that say, "Really, Dad, you're doing this?"
Well, I
Or
think they do. I mean, I don't know if you read, but after one of the games, one of the losses, or maybe it was one of the few wins that they had, I believe that Steve Belichick, his son, and also one of the coaches, his wife, like got into like a screaming fight with Jordan
oh,
Hudson. And it was basically like you like you twisted the bill, like you are taking advantage of him, I mean, and it's not just like a mild age difference. It's like he could be her grandfather.
grandfather, yeah,
So it's yeah, I mean you wonder things. Like I would love to know what like Jordan's parents think about this.
yeah.
Did
I
you
would
know
be
that she recently trademarked or tried to trademark the term gold digger?
yes, yeah.
Which I guess hats off to her for owning it.
I you're nicer than I. And yeah, it sounds like, I've listened to some stuff within the program, and they have a general manager now named Lombardi, who I think also makes over $1 million. And apparently those two hate each other, Jordan and this guy, which is
I get the sense that she, just from what I've read, I mean, I don't know any more than any other media consuming member of the public, but it seems that Jordan really wants a pretty extreme level of control compared to what your typical, well, you were in this position, right? You're a football coach. Like, would your wife ever like dictate your interviews or your interactions or
or
like
be in a
what's,
meeting.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
It's, I mean, that's just wild to think about for any professional, right? Like that your partner or spouse would come in and have that level of involvement. But
especially
there,
this professional. Like he's the most type A, anal, in charge of
right?
everything, and now
Yeah.
this is happening.
Yeah, but so much of it seems so petty. Like I was thinking about it
Yeah.
today. I saw this really funny. I just thought this was such a good joke. I forget if it was on Twitter or somewhere else, but it was basically this joke of, um, basically the Patriots traded Bill Belichick for Drake May. Like they gave us Bill Belichick
Oh
and they
yeah,
traded
I didn't think.
Drake May.
Right.
Like worst deal of all time for UNC. And I was like, oh my God, that's so perfect. But like apparently, again, this is totally like rumor, but Bill Belichick is like forbid UNC athletics from posting about Drake May because now, I mean, he's like our most famous
Yeah.
recent athletic alum, and he's like the star of the Patriots. They're doing amazingly well. And Bill's so petty that he even cares. Like you would think his attitude would be, I don't have time for that. And why would you be like censoring the social media feed? So there's just a lot of it that's like kind of surprising in that it feels very much like it seems like you should be more focused on the job at hand.
Which the record would indicate maybe he wasn't this year. So we'll see. He'll get at least another year to try to fix it, I suppose.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, it's hard to say. First of all, to me, it seems like a wild choice. I don't know anything about football, but just as someone who hires a lot of people, like you're looking at talent, you're assessing trajectories. Like that's what I'm looking for. And students and staff that I hire, you're looking for someone on an upward trajectory and you hire them and you see where their potential takes them. To hire somebody who's in their mid 70s who had a storied career, but then since the star player left has done very badly.
right.
It doesn't seem like who you'd want to gamble on, except that I think it did achieve a financial goal in that they were putting butts in seats. The stadium sold out. They were, if you believe any PR is good PR, they got tons of PR. And so possibly from the UNC like head honcho perspective, this might have been a good deal. But from a football perspective, it seemed wild to me that that would be your choice versus hiring like a young up and comer from a smaller school. That would seem like a much more logical decision, but what do I know?
Well, we used to always say, coaches, it's not about the X's and the O's, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes. And how good your team is all about talent acquisition. And he was really bad at that in New England for a stretch. And,
Right.
college football, it's arguably more important now than in pro football. In pro football, you can at least pick your guys. They don't
Yeah.
have a choice.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think in college football and college basketball as well, with the transfer portal and just the way that these players are essentially commoditized, like they're bought and sold and they move around. Like you're gonna have to really come in and be convincing to get people to come play on your team. And I just wonder with Belichick's personality, he's
right,
obviously got the star power, right? So to some degree, I'm sure people want to play with him. Now I'm not so sure because it's so embarrassing. So
right.
what is he going to do to recruit these players? You got to be a good salesperson. You've got to be like effusive to some degree. You have to have some kind of culture that people want to buy into. And I'll be very curious to see how that plays out, given what happened this first year.
Yeah, you either have to have that or double the amount of money that Alabama has and whoever
Yeah,
has.
which I just don't know that UNC is going to
Right.
pony up for. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're historically a basketball school, so they're trying to, they're trying to tap that football money because there's more money in football.
Right.
But it's just not clear if that's, this was a gamble. It's not clear to me. I mean, right now, early indicators suggest it's not going to pay off.
Time
I
will
hope
tell.
it does. It'd be
Right.
amazing. What a comeback story. Like, what if next year, they go 10-2 or something, and it's like, wow, you could imagine a movie about that.
Especially if it's um, precipitated by him dumping Jordan like in August, and then all of
Ooh,
a sudden,
yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Wouldn't that would be such a great story. I would love to see that movie.
all right, me too. Um, okay, we're going to talk next just a little bit about Christmas. Before I ask my question to you, Lindsay, I wrote last week about Christmas music. Do you have a favorite Christmas song?
Oh goodness. I First of all, I love the song that's like, I want a hippopotamus for Christmas because it annoys the heck out of my kids. And I think it's hilarious. And I love to belt it at the top of my lungs around the house. But I'm like a true millennial. And so rather than a song, I would say my Christmas album is the Love Actually soundtrack.
Uh,
That movie came out my freshman year of college. I remember going to see it and just like, to me, it's not Christmas until I've listened to that soundtrack all the way through.
you have to watch the movie too?
No, at this point, I can only watch the movie every few years. I feel like I've seen it too many times. I
Okay,
can basically like play it in my head. But I do love the soundtrack in the background if I'm wrapping presents or something.
nice. And you've got a 5 and an 8 year old at home?
That's
So
right.
we've got a 16-year-old, and so we're kind of past that fun and magical stage. But one of the things that I did when she was little all throughout the year is, you have memories when you're older, and you always remember the good things. You hear parents talk about when their kids are older. Oh, I remember this cute thing and that
Yeah.
cute thing, and oh, I miss it and I miss that. I really made a point to document some of the bad things that happened with having a kid so
Yeah.
that when, we're in our 50s and 60s and we're lamenting the fact that she's not with us anymore, I can pull out my phone to my wife and say, "Hey, you remember this? It wasn't
Yeah.
always all that great." So, um, you
I've done that.
are, what's that?
I've also done that too. Like when you're feeling sad about being an empty nester, just remember this is what it actually looked like.
Right. You don't get to just pick and choose. But I'm going to make you pick and choose. You've got like a great week coming up with all sorts of awesome things. Um, what are maybe some things that are really difficult for you right now, having a 5 and an 8 year old at this time of year?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that being not on a schedule sometimes it's like really lovely, but also it can be challenging. And with our 5-year-old in particular, she just has a lot of big emotions. And so we got caught up the other night. We stayed out. This is what happened. We were hosting holiday parties. And I'm trying to experiment with like, how can we host things at our house? We don't have to pay for a babysitter, so that's a plus. But we still have to somehow get the kids to bed, right? So we had like, I've got a visiting, currently I have an international student from Israel, so I had her over for dinner one night. I had another people, every night we had something. So the kids went to bed a few nights kind of late, and that builds up to tantrum
Mm.
time. So on Friday night, my younger daughter, I let them have Tootsie Roll Pops. She had a blue one, and she had the biggest meltdown because her lips and teeth, or her lips and her tongue were blue, and she was very unhappy about that. And she couldn't figure out how to get them not to be blue anymore. And she brushed her teeth, but that didn't work. And I kept trying to tell her, like, it's going to be fine, it's going to go away. But she was so in the tantrum that she couldn't even hear that. So
Yeah,
it went on like that for like 60 minutes. Finally, she heard me and she's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And I said,
it's your
"I've been
fault, of course.
trying to tell you." So just that, it's kind of like the big, big emotions. And then, we've got the two kids. They play well together. They're very sweet. I made them like facilitate a sister Christmas yesterday where
Mhm.
this is a new tradition I'm hoping to develop. I had them write a little letter to each other saying
Oh,
something nice that they liked, and then I took them to the store and they each bought a present. So that was very lovely, but most of it's like fighting. Like they're
yeah.
just, it's their form of entertainment is fighting with each other. So usually what happens by the time break is over, we're like everyone needs to go back to school. Everyone needs to go back to work. Like let's get out of this house.
Get back into our routines.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
that they're going to have a memory in their 20s of those things that you were just talking about, and they're going to remember all the sweet and lovely things because they're
Totally.
not going to remember the fighting and the bickering.
Mhm. Mhm. I hope so, but
I
I
think
will
that's
remember that.
typically how it works with brothers and sisters. Um, okay, we're going to wrap up with one existential question for you. I
Yes.
recently watched Ben Stiller's documentary on his parents, Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira. And I did not, I mean, I knew that they were a comedy team beforehand, but I did not know kind of their career trajectories. And this is really oversimplifying it, but I'm going to do that. Um, my question is going to be, and then I'll clarify it. Would you rather be Jerry Stiller or Ann Mira? And the point being, Jerry Stiller comes across as maybe a little bit less talented, but eventually he became more commercially successful. Ann Mira was more talented, more gifted as like an actress and a comedian, but eventually was a little bit less commercially successful. So would you rather be Jerry or Ann?
This is such an interesting question. Of course, my initial reaction was Anne, but if I'm being really honest, given that they were married, I think it would drive me insane that my partner would be more successful than me, especially if like even if we both agreed like, oh, you're the like I'm the more talented one, I'm the more hardworking one, and yet you're watching them just have this like wild commercial success. I wish I could say that I was like Buddhist enough or non-attachment enough to not care about that, but the reality is that that would probably drive me insane. So I guess I'm gonna say Jerry Stiller.
I like it. I appreciate the honesty.
That's a truly honest answer.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, for better or worse, I do have a competitive side to me, and I think that that would probably bother me. But I'd be curious, did they address that in the or in the movie, like how they grapple with each other's careers?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And it was really interesting. And again, I kind of distilled it down. I don't think either one of them was untalented.
Of course,
And
of course. Obviously, Jerry Stiller was massively talented.
right. So, but it was they were definitely wildly different people. And it was
How would you
interesting.
answer that question?
Uh, well, I don't know that I have a great answer other than, and I had thought about it and I couldn't really think of how I would answer the question. And then you gave your answer. Um, and I think I would probably pick being Anne just because in real life, I've done a little bit of that personally. My wife is way more talented in pretty much every area than I am. Um, but I also, you know, I'm super excited for her when she does well at work. She's, done tremendous things, and it doesn't really bother me at all.
Yeah.
I'm competitive about a lot of things, but as it turns out, I'm not competitive about
Mhm.
that. And that's one of the things about marriage too. Like you marry somebody and you don't extrapolate where are we going to be in 10, 15,
That's
20. You
true.
just have no idea. I wouldn't have known when I was 25 that I could make those
Right.
choices.
You don't know what it's gonna look like. And you're right. I mean, it's weird when I think about my actual husband, I would always be happy for his success. I can't imagine feeling jealous or competitive. But when I'm thinking about like the level of fame, like just the Stillers, like being in Hollywood, like I feel like that would be just really hard. It seems like people get really into their egos and public image. And
Your
yeah,
self-worth is completely tied to how many people are paying attention to you, basically.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, because like my husband and I are basically in the same field. We're both researchers, we're both professors, and I don't think we feel any level of competition. It's more just like, wow, that's so awesome. I'm so excited for you. But something about the public facing, like the fame, celebrity of it all, that seems like it would be tricky.
Yeah. And she wound up doing a lot of like theater work when she was older, which is kind of in her wheelhouse. So I think she felt like that was her success stuff. So um,
Right. And you can have actors who are just incredible performers and they're acting in theater and just that never gets the same level of public attention as if you have a blockbuster
right.
comedy movie.
Which is fine. And I mean, I think that's a lot of the case on Substack. There are a ton of people that are
Mm,
like you that um, love writing the way maybe Anne loved performing, and they're happy to do it on a smaller scale
yeah.
because you don't want to quit your job and go have to feed your family doing this, but it's something, excuse me, that's really important to you and that you're good at and you're passionate about.
No, that's very true. That's a really great analogy because you're doing it for the love of the thing and you love to get better and improve and learn. And there's this curiosity that keeps you going. And you don't need that like big commercial success to make it worth it.
Right. Um, and speaking of that, there were two people last week that left some really good comments on our podcast last week. One, I won't say the full comment. Bill was our runner-up comment because he made me laugh about cloudy balls. You can go back and listen to last week's if you want. And then Joshua from Austria. We were talking a little bit last week about the Florida Man game, and he reminded me of an incident. He didn't remind me, he told me, and then I had to go back and look. But Jack Nicholson back in the 90s, did you ever hear the story with him and golf club and road rage?
No, but I could imagine.
Yeah, Josh dropped that in the comments last week, and I went and looked. Basically, Nicholson was on his way to play golf, had his golf clubs in his car, got really mad at somebody driving, got out of his car and beat the ever loving, you know what, out of this person's car with a golf club.
Oh my goodness.
And the punchline of the story is they asked him about it later. And he's like, I wasn't even really thinking about it, but I must have known what I was doing because I didn't want to hurt my club. So I picked a club that I never use. I beat the shit out of his car with a 2 iron.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, um, those of you that have listened all the way through, drop us a comment. Um, Reply to this email if you got it via email. And anything we left on the table, Lindsay?
No, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for doing it. I know it's a super busy time of year, and everybody a reminder go out and check out Lindsay's Not Normal Substack. You will laugh your ass off.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. We're taking a knee.